Hello and welcome back to another Router Guides video. My name's Humphrey and we're going to cover the Singapore Employment Pass, also known as the EP. Now, if you've been to Singapore, you like it, you want to stay long-term, one of the most common and for some IT people, the only way that you can stay there past 30 days or for a couple months or years is to get the Employment Pass. So we'll cover what exactly it does, some of the restrictions, the timeline, the procedures, what paperwork you'll need, and at the end I will give you a couple tips that's going to make your life a lot easier and hopefully save you some gray hairs as you go through this process. I'm holding my Employment Pass right now. I'm covering up most of the private information because I don't want you to zoom in on the video and do any type of identity theft, but I will show you somewhere on the side of the screen a zoomed in picture of the Employment Pass with my details blacked out. Okay, so what exactly is the Employment Pass? The Employment Pass gives you the right to work and live in Singapore long term. It is applied not by you, but by your company, your prospective company that you interview with. And so you would go interview with the company, you would answer their ad, go through and sign the offer. You actually sign the offer with that company, and then that company goes to their legal department. They probably contract out with a third party, and they start the immigration process of getting all your documents together and applying for the card. So the company applies for the card. Now it gives you on the initial pass, so when you get your first employment pass, it gives you the right to work in Singapore for 2 years, Along with that, the front of your card is the employment pass itself. The back of the card is a long-term multiple entry visa. It is a visit pass, a multi-entry long-term visit pass. What that lets you do is lets you go in and out of Singapore using the normal Singapore lanes. And so you no longer have to get your passport stamped by the immigration guy. So you don't need to go up to the immigration guy. He looks over all your documents, does the stamp and all that garbage. Once you have the employment pass and the visit pass, the multi-entry visit pass on the back of it, you are good to go in and out of Singapore pretty much as you want. So if you are going to Singapore because you like to travel within Asia, you like Thailand, you like Taiwan, you want to go to Vietnam, you want to go all over the place in Asia, this is great because you no longer have to get all those stamps in your passport. Okay, so the first time you get it, it's 2 years working in Singapore, get a condo apartment along with it. Well, they don't, the government doesn't give you a condo or an apartment, you have to look for it yourself. And when you renew it, so let's say you're coming up on 2 years, and that's my situation. I've been here on the employment pass for about 18 months now, so 2 years is coming up. You can start the process for the renewal. You tell your employer, hey, I'm going to be staying, I like the job, everything's going great. I would like to do the renewal. Upon the renewal, you get 3 years. So it goes from 2 years to 3 years. So that's a pretty good deal. Now, before a company applies for and issues you, and the government issues you an employment pass, there is one interesting requirement that the company has to do. So the employment pass is to bring foreigners into Singapore for work. Now, there is a law that requires companies to give a fair shot to Singaporeans for that position. Now, I forget the name. It's a fair interviewing or fair advertisement. It's something like that, FSF or something. And so you sign the dotted line for your offer. You go through the interviews for your company. Then your company must advertise on a job board, and this is the Singaporean official job board. I think it's called mycareers.sg or something like that. I'll put a link somewhere in the description. So they have to advertise this position for 28 days, so 4 weeks or so. And only after that, and they have to maintain a list of everyone they interview, and they use that in the application and say, we're applying for Humphrey Chung to get this job. And by the way, we've also done the 28 days requirement for the advertising. Now, within the advertisement, they have to be very clear about the salary range, and the top end of the salary range cannot be more than twice of the bottom. So you'll see many, many, many of those job advertisements. You'll see something like 7,500 per month and the dash to 15,000. Now that's the base range that doesn't include commissions if you're going for a sales position. Now another requirement of the company, my glasses just fell down. Another requirement of getting the EP is the company must offer a managerial or technical IT type job. So if you're watching Router Guides, most likely you're in IT and you would fit this criteria. So you must have signed the job offer. So you've gone through the interviews, you've signed the job offer, and the fixed salary per month must be at least $4,500. And this has been raised a couple times in the past year or so, because right now Singapore is going through this interesting period where I guess you could almost say Singapore is going through their Make Singapore Great Again situation, much like the US had their stint of Make America Great, Homeland First, Singaporeans for Singaporeans, that type of stuff. That's going to be another video later. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but the minimum wage has been raised for the employment pass to $4,500 per month. Now, chances are CCNA, CCNP, CCIE, pre-sales, that type of stuff, $4,500 should be no problem at all to meet if you're coming from, if you're interviewing for a large multinational company. Speaking about multinational companies, how do you do this? So do you look through the job boards first, find your job, and then have them put in the employment pass application, or should you already be working for a large multinational company and ask for a transition, ask for a promotion or a transfer? Now, the way I did it is I'm working for Cisco, and a couple years ago, I simply asked my boss, hey, one day I'm interested in going to Asia. Like, that would be pretty cool. And what happened is he remembered that, and lo and behold, about 1 year later, I get an email from the director of the area saying, hey, Humphrey, the engineer for this area has left. Would you like to take a shot at this position? And a couple of things helped me out. I closed a couple big deals. I was already well known in the company, had a decent reputation. That's important. And I also had a reputation that I was willing to travel anywhere and everywhere on short notice. So I love to travel. Obviously, if you're going to do this EP and transfer across, you're willing to move to a different country, you better show your employer or prospective employer that you're flexible in moving. If you're the type of person that you've only lived in the United States and you lived in the same city, and now you're going for a job that requires a transfer to Singapore, you can bet that that company is going to kind of raise an eyebrow and go, well, Humphrey has lived in the same city, he's never moved. I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if he's flexible enough. So just make sure that you love to travel. And also a tip, if you're going to do this, if you're going to apply for an EP for Singapore, visit Singapore. Don't do this sight unseen. Visit Singapore for 2 weeks. 2 weeks is a good time. 1 week may be too short, but 2 weeks, come over here after COVID and check the sites out. Go into the malls, go into Starbucks, walk around, take the MRT to strange places, and just kind of see if the vibe, if you like the vibe. Now, 99.9% of the people who do this will say Singapore is cool, right? Generally, when people visit Singapore, they like it, right? So, but at least do this, especially if you have a family. If you're going to move your family over, and we'll talk about the dependents and all that stuff, but if you're going to move your family over, visit, right? Visit for 2 weeks and just get everyone on board with that. Okay, speaking of dependents, if you have kids, if you have a wife, if you're caring for your parents, right? Older mom and dad, grandparents, etc. After you get your employment pass, you can get them over. And there's 2 ways of doing it. Well, there's probably at least 2 ways that I know of. There's something called a dependent pass, and there's also a long-term visit pass. There's also the other way, which happens a lot, is your husband and spouse could also get their own employment pass. So this is very common with couples where the husband works in IT and the wife works in insurance. It's a couple that I know. So if both of you working, that's great, because if either one of you loses their job, we'll talk about that. We'll talk what happens when you lose your job or you want to quit when you have an employment pass. But it really helps if both have an employment pass, because you have a little extra safety net. Now, if you want to bring your kids over, your dependents over, you do have an extra requirement of $6,000 must be your minimum monthly salary. So to get the EP itself as a single person, $4,500 is the minimum. But if you want to bring extra people over, presumably you're bringing them over, you're going to be taking care of them, the minimum salary goes up to $6,000. Now, if you're going to be taking care of your parents, you can bring them over on a pass, but this requires a minimum salary of $12,000. That's Singapore dollars per month to bring them over, which kind of makes sense because it costs more money, and you maybe put them in a nursing home and have a nurse and stuff like that. So that's why it's $12,000. Okay, so let's go over the timeline of how long it took for me to get my employment pass and get into Singapore. So I was interviewing in September and October, and I was already working for a very large corporation, multinational. I call it megacorp. So this actually smooths the transition quite a bit. So the preferred way here is already be working for a mega corporation, a mega multinational, and then do an internal transfer. You already know the culture, you're already in the system, then you're simply changing from one country to another. It's not as easy as flipping a switch, but internally you can think of it as that way. If you're doing it from scratch, so you're interviewing cold for the company, you are most likely, very, very, very likely to lose out to anyone who's internal. In fact, in most companies, an internal candidate will always destroy an external candidate, almost always, unless they hate the guy or gal. So September and October, I was interviewing for this new position, and basically, since everyone likes me, it's a checkbox. The job is yours if you want it. So on October 10th, 2019, I signed the contract, I signed the offer, and then they had to advertise in the jobs board. Remember the 28-day rule. They advertised on the jobs board, and around October 23rd, October 23, that's when the job had been advertised for 28 days. So before they actually gave me the offer, they'd been in the process of advertising. So you don't need to put on the jobs board right when you sign the job offer. The advertisement could have already been in flight before you sign the offer. And that's probably common, just so you don't have to wait as long after you sign the offer to start the application process. So October 23rd, legal is involved, and then I start gathering up all the documents. What documents are we talking about? They wanted a copy of my resume. That's easy. I just went on LinkedIn, make a resume from the LinkedIn, give it to them. They also want a photocopy, a picture of your degree. So the actual degree, diploma, whatever it is. And that's interesting because like in the US, no one cares about your degree, especially I have an AA degree. I never finished my 4-year degree. So like, who cares about the AA? It's gathering dust. So I actually had to go back home to Redlands and like rip out all the drawers and find this damn thing. I also, just in case, I went back to the school and I asked if it was possible to get a copy, and it is possible. But luckily, I found the actual degree, took a picture. Now, the picture has to be straight, it can't be blurred. I mean, it has to be the best damn picture that you can make. Now, do you need a 4-year degree for Singapore? No, I'm living proof that high-paying job, 4-year degree is not required, but they're looking for years of experience and or a combination of the degree. So I have a 2-year degree in administration of justice because I wanted to go in law enforcement, and I also have 15, 20 years of IT let's say 5 years of pre-sale experience. So it goes to review and they accepted it. So no, don't worry if you don't have a 4-year degree. If you have certifications, that also helps as well. Okay, so I gather all the documents, give it to the legal department, they do their thing, and November 6th, 2019, November 6th is when they actually submit all the documents to the Singapore government, to the MOM, it's the Ministry of Manpower. And on November 19th, so not that, 2 weeks, right? About 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, November 19th, Ministry of Manpower stamps the approval and issues what is called the IPA, the In Principle Approval, IPA letter. And this letter is what you print out along with other documents, and that's what you bring into Singapore to show, hey, I'm coming in. It's not your card, but you start work and you go to the MOM, you do your fingerprints and your picture, and after that, that's when you get the actual physical card. It was hand delivered, it was couriered to the front desk of my company, and I picked it up and celebrate, have some drinks and all that stuff. So then you have an actual card. So the actual process, pretty fast if you have all your documents in order. And that's a tip for you guys. If you know you're going to go through this, find your degree, get a copy of your resume, copy of your certs, basically prove that you're a good guy. Maybe college transcripts, they may ask for that. Myself, I don't remember if I actually sent college transcripts, but it takes some time to get these documents, and you might as well do this with the least stress possible and do it beforehand. Okay, let's talk about what happens when you lose your job and you have an EP. So your employment pass is tied to your employer. So 2 things can happen here. Let's say you don't like your employer, you hate their guts, and you want to change jobs. You want to go to another employer, right? You're in the same building as Google and you think, hey, I kind of want to work for Google, or I want to work for Amazon. I like the cloud, right? Or Ruckus or Mist or whoever, right? You're in pre-sales, you have the ability to kind of go wherever you want. If you're on employment pass, it's not, you have a couple extra hoops to jump through. It's not impossible. So since your employment pass is tied to your company, you can interview for whoever you want. So have at it. Go to Amazon, go to Google, interview for them. You do not have to tell your current employer that you're doing this. And so let's say you interview for Google and Google likes you. You sign the offer. Google has to apply for an employment pass again, right? So basically you're going to do this dance of you're going to cancel the old one and get the new one, right? You're going to cancel Megacorp and then you're going to get a new employment pass through Google. Now, you probably saw this one coming, but let's say Google applies for the employment pass and for some reason that employment pass is rejected. Thankfully, you don't have to tell your current employer because nothing happened, right? Now your contract is dead. Your contract that you signed is null and void pretty much because you can't get the employment pass and you can't switch over. So you don't need to tell anyone. But if you do get hired by Google and the employment pass is issued, you get the in principle approval for Google for the new company, and that's when, well, you had to tell them anyways. You go to your current employer and say, well, I've been hired with another company, and now they're going to cancel the old one. They're going to talk to the Ministry of Manpower. They're going to go through the cancel, and then Google will help you activate the new one. So that's what happens if you want to switch jobs. Now, what happens when you're laid off or you're fired? This is where it gets super interesting and kind of sad because I've seen it happen. On the employment pass, you have 30 days, you have 30 days to leave the country after you are laid off or fired, when you're no longer working for the company. So that's not a lot of time because you've got to clear out of the condo, you've got to move things in storage. If you have a family, you're really screwed because you can take them out of school and stuff like that. Now, in some cases, you may be able to apply for an extension, but you got 30 days. Basically, your long-term pass gets converted into a 30-day short-term pass. Basically, it's stripped away from you and you get 30 days. So that's why the employment pass is a little dodgy if you expect hard times to come. Now you can do things like if you know the layoff is coming, then you could do things to prepare. You can let your landlord know. And actually another thing, most landlord contracts for expats, you're coming in as a foreigner, you're an expat, most contracts that you enter into should, well, I mean you should or else you're freaking dumb, should have what's called a diplomatic clause. What a diplomatic clause is, if you are laid off and you're forced to leave the country and you give ample notice to your landlord, you will get your deposit back even though you haven't stayed there for the full 1 year or 2 year term. And let's face it, Singapore rent's expensive. That deposit, my deposit, 6,000 Singapore dollars. I don't want to lose that. That's a lot of money. So your diplomatic clause says, hey, you got laid off, not a fault of your own. You get your 6,000 back because it's not your fault. We will talk in a later video your options if this 30-day thing scares you, which it should. There are other things to do, other cards to get, like the personalized employment pass that can help you out. Okay, that's been a quick and hopefully detailed video for you guys. If you're thinking about coming to Singapore in the employment pass, it is possible. I'm living proof of it. The Chinese American that cannot speak Chinese coming over to Singapore. I've done this 19 months, going on 19 months, and so far so good. I'm doing this video from Thailand because I'm on vacation in quarantine here, so why not? If you have any questions, put them down in the comments below. If you like this video, thumbs up. If it's been useful to you and maybe you want more content, click on subscribe. I hope you're staying safe and take care. Talk to you later. Bye.